And for more on this, we're now joined by political analyst Lukhona Mnguni, and he joins us now via our video link. Lukhona, thank you so much for your time this evening. I mean, let's begin here. Breaking news coming in this evening from the Constitutional Court dismissing that application. What's your reaction?
Well, good evening, Bali, and good evening to your viewers. Well, if one had the opportunity to peruse the papers that were submitted to the Constitutional Court by Umkhonto Party, it was quite clear that there was no matter arising in the papers that could be justifiable for the Constitutional Court to interdict the first sitting of the National Assembly. And it was also quite clear that in the papers themselves, Umkhonto Party wanted to create some imagination that they have enough evidence that can be brought before the court, but they choose to willfully withdraw the tabling of that evidence. And therefore, in that instance, I suppose the court had no reason to believe that what was being brought before them carries enough weight. And of course, as the court has said in the commentary before the order that it has granted, saying that the agency appears to be self-created in that the matters that were being brought before the court were known about 10 days ago, and the party knew that the first sitting had to happen within 14 days of the declaration of the election results, and therefore they may not have moved with speed. But I think that on the Constitutional Court's point of view, because some people had been skeptical whether the court would even have the time to consider the matter before Friday, I think the court has effectively appreciated that it is urgent to look into these papers and then to give some determination so that there is clarity and some level of stability ahead of the sitting on Friday.
And look, on at the same time, I mean, we saw another judgment coming out of the Electoral Court, and that's the matter of Jabulani Khumalo, who still claims that he is the leader of the MK party, but that has since been now dismissed, and it's really a scathing report or judgment coming out of the Electoral Court. What do you make of that?
Well, again, another sort of expected judgment, Mbali. You'll remember that when the MK party wanted to make sure that the face that would be on the ballot will be that of former President Jacob Zuma, they then did a substitution of who is the leader, which effectively means they amended the papers that are before the IEC in terms of the party. And this is not different with Build One South Africa, for example, amending the name of the party to reflect the name of the leader. Build One South Africa with Mmusi Maimane. Parties do this for a variety of strategic reasons. And for MK party, it was so that the name, the face of former President Jacob Zuma would be next to the logo, the name, and the abbreviation on the ballot for MK party. And Jabulani Khumalo willfully participated in that. And it seems as if, I mean, if you listen to various narratives, Jabulani Khumalo was a proxy in any event for former President Jacob Zuma in terms of registering the MK party. Processes have consequences, and I think that this is sometimes what politicians do not appreciate. They always think that there's a political solution to each and everything. Administrative processes have consequences, and part of the administrative consequences is that the name of former President Jacob Zuma was duly substituted to be leader of MK party. And lastly, I mean, in terms of local standi, which I thought was a fairly scathing part of that judgment of the Electoral Court, was the fact that the court said it's almost common cause that Jabulani Khumalo has now been expelled by Umkhonto party, which I think makes even much more a difficult case for his pursuits in the Western Cape High Court, where he's trying to make sure that he can be sworn in as a member of parliament from Umkhonto party come Friday.
And, Lukhona, also just looking at that judgment and what it then means for the political career of Jabulani Khumalo, would you say that this is technically the end of the road for him in the MK party?
Well, I don't think he had much of a political career to begin with, to be quite honest. I think he was just a proxy of politicians, and he underestimated how much he was a pawn in a particularly bigger political game. There isn't much of a reference of a political career for him in terms of track record, and I think that he's served his usefulness for those who wanted him to, be the face and probably the register, the person who registers the political party, but I don't think that they had foreseen any lucrative political role for him in the party going forward.
And Lukhona, let's look at that press briefing that we saw this evening by the IFP, and of course the potential of what this then means for the MK party. It also seems as if the MK party at the moment may be just left out of governing the KwaZulu-Natal province. What do you make of the negotiations currently underway in KwaZulu-Natal for a government to be formed in that province, and with the likelihood that we might not see the MK party with the majority of the votes not being in government?
Well, I think, Mali, if you listen closely to what the IFP had to say earlier this evening, for me, there are a number of things that are quite telling about MK party. They don't seem to be well prepared for what they have gained in this election. They remind me of the DA in Ekurhuleni in 2021, when, the mayoral candidate was not sworn in and she kept her seat in the provincial legislature in Gauteng. And then come the first sitting, Tanya Campbell is sworn in, is voted in with the help of the EFF as mayor of the city of Ekurhuleni, and she's stunned, almost shocked that this has happened to her. And the MK party is behaving in such a similar fashion for me, in that they don't seem prepared to see through the consequences of their success in this election. And the fact that the IFP says that on Monday, the MK party did not pitch for a meeting. That was a preliminary engagement that was expected between the two parties. And the fact that it seems as if you saw the letter that MK party had written to the IFP, it was almost like a scramble in terms of how the letter was written and how the letter was delivered, to say, hey, this thing is sitting on Friday, therefore let us try and meet the IFP. But also the discord in the messaging of MK, that in one instance there are legislatures in which you do not want to appear and present yourselves for the first sitting, but in KZN now you suddenly have an interest to string together a coalition arrangement. It almost says to me they are ill prepared. They are not ready for the moment, and perhaps the moment might be well overwhelming on them, and there may well be disagreements internally that are being masked by these various public, postures, whether they are going to the court, whether they are refusing to appear in meetings. But it is almost to buy time for them to develop some internal, organizational coherence. And in that instance, if that is the case, it may well mean that MK party's longevity beyond the successes of these elections may be brought to question, but that will only be told by the function of time.
And going back to the 14th of June being a Friday, when we are expecting those members of parliament to be sworn in, and of course the MK party saying that it will not be a part of that swearing in of MPs. And when it comes to what it has questioned, that the National Assembly won't be able to quorate because it would need at least 340 members of parliament. Do you think that this is the right move, particularly now that we've seen them losing this battle in the Constitutional Court?
Well, Mali, if they were so sure that their boycott of the National Assembly would mean that the National Assembly is not duly constituted, then they wouldn't have had cause to go to court, because they would be certain that them not being present would derail that sitting. And we've seen this in local government, in certain municipalities, where members of the council know that if they don't present themselves, then the council would not be duly quorate, and therefore it will not carry on its business, whether it is to elect a speaker, whether it is to vote on a motion of no confidence, and all of those things. So it seems as if that the MK party is itself confused as to whether or not it is correct in its pursuit, and it seems it was using the Constitutional Court to test whether or not it is correct in its standing. What we know is that the Constitution demands that the National Assembly must be made up of 350 to 400 members of Parliament. What we also know is that currently, in terms of our electoral system, the National Assembly is made up of 400 members of Parliament, not 350. Now, what the MK party seems to be testing is to say, if you in the first sitting do not have 350 members of Parliament plus, does it mean that the National Assembly is duly constituted, or is there a shortage? And then the debate also arises amongst legal people to say, are members of Parliament confirmed when the lists are provided to Parliament, or are members of Parliament, constituted when they've been sworn in or affirmed into office by the Chief Justice or a designated judge? Now, those are matters you can only deal with after the sitting has occurred. To then challenge and say, well, I don't believe that sitting was duly constituted. You can't preempt and say, I want to boycott, and therefore the sitting is impugned. It cannot be that case, because your boycott is not even guaranteed. You may well change your mind on the day. Members of the MK party may well change their mind and say, but in whose interest is it that we do not present ourselves to Parliament? Because the 58 of us or so that will be occupying the benches of the National Assembly probably need to present ourselves, because the president of the MK party is a former president. He's got his presidential perks, he's got security and all of that. So why are we being blockaded from going to fulfill our duties and assume our positions? And therefore I think, Mbali, it's quite interesting how they've gone about this, but I think that the court was definitely correct in this instance. But if they feel that the sitting, if they successfully boycott on Friday, was not duly corrected, then that would be something to pursue in the courts, but you can't preempt it.
All right, Lukhona, thank you so much for your time and for that insight. That's Lukhona Mnguni, political analyst, just giving us insight there when it comes to that breaking news from the MK party. And of course, that matter being dismissed by the Constitutional Court and allowing for the first sitting of Parliament to go ahead on Friday.